And I'm live. Are you? Probably because we're here. It is Monday, April 17th, 2 days after tax day in America, 2 days after my halfway to 90 birthday party. Welcome. Today we are in number 3 of a 6-part series on the roles that we play in our body. And today we're going to be talking about rescuer. So if the role of rescuer is something that you do in your life, stick around because you're going to learn today how to become more aware of that role as it shows up in your life, and then ignite new possibilities for how to show up differently. Toby Gibbons, you are here, and several other people are here. It is a delight to see you all. Can you hear me? Can you see me? And where are you tuning in from? Tuning in and chiming in. So chime on in. Oh gosh, I hope this video is working today. Remember to live chat, folks. That's what YouTube is telling me. So let's have you, Toby von Deutschland. Wie geht's dir heute? Heute, I'm about to go into German because my parents were born and raised in Switzerland, and I spent a number of years going to German school, and I've lived over in Switzerland little bits at a time. So, Toby, good to see you. You can hear me, you can see me. That's good. Where else are people tuning in from? Chime in while you tune in and tell me, where are you from in the world? And if you're feeling bold, what is your halfway to birthday? Now, I just turned 45 this past Saturday, and this is connected to the roles that we play. Many of us can feel like a victim of the aging process. Good morning, Jody from California. How many times have you heard, don't get old, aging sucks? And I'm not saying that it's a fun cakewalk and easy for everybody, but have you heard that narrative of how sucky aging is? And don't get old. There's a lot of reinforcement for that narrative. And then we can inadvertently become a victim of the narrative of how bad aging is. Do you like being a victim of something that is naturally going to happen to you? It's not bad or wrong to age. It's something that happens. It might feel bad and wrong at times. And Nicole, hello. Good to see you. So talk to me. Are you aware of this collective consciousness of the sort of negative persecution of aging? And do you want to become a victim of it? If not, join me and share with me either now or later. What is your halfway to age? Because as I am igniting more creator energy in my life and less victim energy, which is the first 2 of this series, there's more fun, there's more improv, there's more playfulness that comes about. And I just spontaneously found myself saying, I'm gonna be halfway to 90. I'm gonna be halfway to 90. And people loved it. They were surprised, they were shocked. Not everybody enjoyed it because it made them think about their own halfway to age and all that that means. I think that's a good thing because we all have good and bad stuff that we're carrying. And the more we tell the truth about it, the more we can flush it up and get creative and have an active role in creating more good in our lives. Brian, it is great to see you. Thank you for the happy birthday from the King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So Nicole does not subscribe to being a victim of aging, and I will vouch for that because I know Nicole and I have seen how she shows up in the world. Brent Green says my video and audio look excellent. Thank you, Brent. I put another light over there, so hopefully I'm not in as much shadow today. All right. My name is Dr. Renee Ostertag. I am a physical therapist and a psychotherapist in the state of Colorado, living in Denver, in the United States of America. And this is educational in nature, today's session. So it is not to be regarded as medical advice or treatment. This is your consent. This is supposed to be informational, educational, and hopefully we'll have some fun along the way. If you are feeling troubled or concerned with any kind of symptoms or healthcare crisis, mind or body, please seek support. I can be that support for you under a different umbrella. I am a licensed physical therapist, and you can reach out and schedule a free consult with me. Earthing, it is good to see you again. You used to shop at the King of Prussia Mall, not in Pennsylvania anymore. Maybe Brian from Prussia and the kingdom over there can pick something up for you. Jody, you were 45 years back. And your internal age will remain 36. I think there's something to that, right? Like you see Renee, but there's a physical Renee, an emotional Renee, a mental Renee, and a spiritual Renee. And sometimes those ages don't match up. Sometimes I feel like I'm spiritually 89 or 4. Either way, more wise than I am today at the physical age of 45. Sometimes my mental age feels like 10 or 14. Sometimes my emotional age feels like 2 or 4. So who knows what all that means. But it's just ways to expand how we look at the world. A very wise shaman taught me about that, Joy Gray, who's a lovely lady, about our 4 bodies. And I think about that a lot. Each of them has different needs and sometimes different ages. And our internal age definitely, right, can be different than our physical age. And you'll see that in a lot of people's behaviors, myself and my own and others, right? Like, I don't think road rage is congruence between someone's mental, emotional, and physical age, as an example, right? Like a 45-year-old woman, like, I don't actually have too much road rage, but occasionally this like inner persecutor will come out and just be nasty. And it's like, wow, are you really 45 right now? Because you just called that guy an nincompoop and a stupid poopy pants or whatever it is, right? Like that misalignment can create a lot of suffering for us. So yeah, Nicole can relate to all the different ages and to not make any of that wrong, but to be curious about all of it as it unfolds in your life and in your world. Marcus, my Marcus dog, he sometimes is very curious about treats and he would like to come and say hello. And by he, I mean me, is feeling a little sad. I had a happy birthday bandana for him, but I forgot to put it on him because I was actually in Chicago over the weekend. Marcus, come. I know. Come here. And I want to tell you about my trip to Chicago because it's relevant to Marcus, come. You want to do some tricks? Yes. Come on up. Good boy. There's a good boy. Can you say hi to the camera? Oh, there's my Marcus dog. There's Marcus Barkus. Yes, good boy. So to recap last week, we got some halfway ages coming in. Boxing and Bulldogs. Good to see you. Toby is halfway to 78. Way to go, my friend. I love the ownership of that. and you're male and you haven't encountered being victimized about age, but my own mind is freaking me out with fears around heart failure since I got an Apple Watch. OMG. Yes, I can relate. When I first got an Apple Watch, I had no idea I was only taking like 5 to 6,000 steps a day. And it's like, ooh, sometimes information and truth is not always comfortable. Yes, I join you in the nervousness of that. And thank God we have the awareness because then we can take some action and make changes if we like and want. Because, Toby, I think your heart, it's possible it could have a very, very, very long time to live yet. So I love that. Um, yeah. Okay, where was I? Anybody else? What's your halfway to age? Why is that important? It's creator energy that opposes victim energy. And the first week in this series, we talked about a victim role and how that can show up in your life. And it shows up in ways that you think, in ways that you feel, and in ways that you behave. And one of the common themes of victim is helpless, hopeless, powerless. I can't. Poor me. Life happens to me. I have no responsibility in it. And there's very little energy for forward action, right? Like the motivation to change is really low with a victim. And in my experience of victim, it's this constant loop of reaction to drama and problems. It's like the vortex of trauma drama. And it just sweeps me up and makes me tired. And yet, historically, I've been very chemically comfortable with that reactionary loop between brain and body because it was so familiar. And I didn't know how addicted I was to the helpless powerlessness of being a victim. And I don't want to make all the victim energy bad because that is a guaranteed way to stay stuck in that. Brian Marzak's coming in at a strong halfway to 106. Way to go, my friend Brian. What else halfway age to live or later? Would love to hear. Solo Mija is halfway to 102. God, I just really love the engagement when you all participate. It brings me a lot of value and a lot of joy. And that's something I'm very grateful to you all for. Halfway to 108. Willeen, good to see you here. So I'm actually curious when you think about your age in that way, I'm halfway to, what does that create in you? Some people love it. Some people don't. What does it evoke? What does it bring up in your thinking, feeling, and behaving? Right. So the way out of victim is to shift into creator. And part of what keeps us stuck in a victim is the chemical comfortability, addiction chemically to that. I'm not saying you're addicted, but the body can get chemically comfortable with certain states and ways of being, thinking, feeling, behaving. And so I thought it was really important with victim to recognize there's a moment of when we are a victim because an injury has occurred, and that needs compassion. It doesn't need self annihilation, flagellation, and persecuting of yourself or another. Like that moment of when we are a true victim because we're injured because of something that occurred, that needs compassion, my friends. And it's been a real effort to learn that and apply that. And I think that the victim moment is different than a victim mentality where we sort of get caught up in that powerless, helpless, hopeless reactionary loop. And that needs more fierce compassion, right? Like the victim moment needs that tender compassion, and the victim mentality needs fierce compassion, motivation to change. How do you change? You become a creator. How do you create? How do you become more of a creator? That's what we talked about last week. And that was the whole halfway to 90 thing. Like, let me create a new perspective on aging. Some of the other ideas that people had last week that I thought were beautiful, like ways to ignite the creator energy in you, is to get into nature, notice and create safety around you, pause, slow down, let things unfold, stop trying to control everything. Um, Being more aware of the victim in and of itself is a way to ignite more creator energy, because then there's a space between you and the role that you're playing. And in that space lies our power to change and create anew. And that leads to another way to activate creator energy is to increase the space between stimulus and response. And another thing is to pay attention to beauty. When we pay attention to beauty, because it can live and be anywhere, it will naturally evoke our own nature as creator. We are human beings. We make things. Women make another human inside their own body. It is so deeply in our nature. And I was in Chicago this past weekend celebrating halfway to 90, and I went to Second City, which is like the birthplace mecca and growth of improv in the world. And improv is a beautiful, magnificent concept in the world that humans have created as a way to make something from nothing. And Winnie the Pooh said it, the best somethings often come from nothing. I went to a class and saw two performances, and I watched these people follow rules, and they created something amazing from an empty stage. Just people showed up and they created laughter and they created joy and they created connection. And I am so excited. In June, I'm going to have somebody on a live who is an improv instructor, and we're going to talk about how to relate that to healing. So, victim, rescuer is today. Victim was the first time, last time was creator. Today is rescuer. So Lamia says that I still have possibility to lay. Oh, oh, that's fun. Okay, so back to halfway to birthday. What does that create in you when you change the way you think about I'm 45 versus halfway to 90? That I still have the possibility to live the same amount of time. Yes, what a wonderful thing. And what do you want to do with that same amount of time? I very much want my second 45 to look different than my first 45. That's exciting. And I get to do that. Jody says the discomfort of being a victim has to be greater than the comfort of being one. Yes, Jody, that's straight up related to that quote from Anne Snin. I hate that I'm probably pronouncing that name wrong, but the bud, right? The change of pain. Somebody help me out if you know what quote I'm talking about. But the change, Jody said it well, right? And when the discomfort of a victim is greater than the comfort of being one, we'll be forced to change. And that is such a beautiful perspective on pain as this gorgeous motivator to create change, to change a behavior. And I want to talk today about the rescuer. And I'm curious, when you hear that word, the rescuer. See, Phil, I don't know who you are. And right now I'm not feeling an impulse to text somebody that I don't know who they are. We're talking about the rescuer. And I'm curious, what do you notice in your body when you hear that word? What images come to your mind? What impulses arise in your body? I bet there's good and I bet there's bad. I bet it's a mix and a host. And I'm curious and invite you and encourage you strongly. Type in the chat when you hear the word rescuer. What does that bring up in your body, in your mind? Because when you type it and contribute in that way, it helps you become more aware of it. Oh, KP. Hi, buddy. It's good to see you. I'm a loser because I can't do it. God, that sounds like a 1-2 punch from all three in the triangle. Rescuer feels, thinks I'm a loser because I can't do it. And you know what? I just want to say, in fact, KP, I actually, in some ways, think two things that makes you a winner. And what I mean by that is a rescuer is an attempt, and I'm going to go through what um, how it looks like. But a rescuer is an attempt to meet a need and to feel better. And when we're around other people that don't feel good, that makes us not feel good. So it will naturally evoke the rescuer. And at the end of the day, it's not our job to make other people feel better. That's actually not within my scope of human practice. As a human, I have no direct control over what's happening inside the skin and case body of another human being. So I think it's actually an empowered way to look at rescuer. They cannot create, it is not actually an effective strategy. You can't rescue because you can't make somebody else feel better. You can impact them, you can influence them. But I don't know that that makes you a loser. But if it does, I then want to offer compassion because the original definition of a loser is one who suffers loss. And there is a suffering when you are watching and witnessing your fellow humans suffer because it activates the suffering in you as well. So, thank you so much for that gorgeous thought. What other people think? What is a rescuer to you, and what does it bring up in body sensations and mind? Wileen says rescuer is giving away my power to someone else by becoming their savior. I think that's a beautiful description. And I know from a lot of reps over a lot of years that, again, it's an ineffective strategy because I can't save another person unless they're actually objectively drowning in a river. I can throw them a rope, right? There's a difference between rescuing someone and supporting someone. Oana, good to see you. She has recently realized I'm using rescuing to avoid taking care of myself and try to get others to need me. Oh, God, that's so good and true and beautiful. And I really want to validate this role is a normal part of the human experience. It's not bad and it's not wrong. It can be unpleasant and it can be ineffective at solving the underlying problem of the unmet need. And when we start to tell the truth about it and how it shows up in our world, then we can be set free from it. But it's not usually pleasant to tell the truth about it. It's a lot like vomiting. You're getting out bad stuff, but the process feels pretty uncomfortable. So, rescuer is a normal, natural role that shows up For all of us, it's like being a teenager and you have zits. It's a phase of development. And being a rescuer is oftentimes a really natural way to try and escape the discomfort of powerless helplessness that comes with being a victim. Crystal Borgstrom. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing your name right, but that was fun to say. So Crystal, it's strange that my rescuer feels like the ones that make me feel afraid. What a beautiful insight. When we give ourselves some space to hear a word and see what it evokes inside of us, we get golden nuggets like that. Like, wow, this strategy in me, this word evokes a sensation that makes me feel afraid. Huh, we can get curious about that. I find that very exciting. Is that a disempowered fear or an empowered fear? I don't know. Some fear is contracting and some fear is of expanding, right? Pachad is the Jewish word for like the imagined fears that aren't actually going to happen. But then there's the fear of expansion and growing more into space that you're not used to occupying. Who knows? But the more you can stay curious and follow the breadcrumbs of unfolding of that emergent nature within you, right? The stuff that just bubbles up from your curiosity and more space between stimulus and response. Crystal, that's gorgeous. If you have any more insights come up for you through this time together today, please share. I'd love to hear sincerely. Toby, the words that come up for rescuer for Toby: binding. It's not unconditional. Yeah, it's like very conditional. So when I get rescued, but someone like that, they always want something in return. Yeah, strings are attached with a rescuer. I spent a lot of years with a lot of strings from my own rescuer. Um, so Awana uses it to feel better about herself, i.e., I am a good person. And Brian, for him, it's controlling. Yup, yup, yup. And the body sensation in me is like, raise your hand if you can relate, because that's one of the things for me with the rescuer. It was all about control. And I'm going to say more about that. So when Brian's trying to rescue his kids from their problems, keyword is their problems, and what does support versus rescuing look like? But the attempt then is to reduce my anxiety for them. And that's the golden Willy Wonka ticket, folks, is that rescuing is a desperate, heroic attempt of your system to try and correct something that feels off course, something out of balance, an unmet need. Okay, so the rescuer thinks to themselves. I'm going to read from this handout here that is created by thepowerofted.com. And I'm happy to send this to you if you want a copy. info@greentreemind.com. Email me and I will get that for you. Crystal has some eye-opening. The ones that were supposed to be my rescuer, my parents, were the most disempowering ones in my childhood. Eye-opening. Please, yes. This eye-opening, right? Like, whoa, frozen shutdown. Whoa, I'm open. I'm awake. That creates new possibilities. And I think the way out of rescuer is awareness and the igniting of new possibilities. So please, whatever your insights are around rescuing, please, I love to see them in the comments. Because as Crystal shares, other people can relate, right? And it brings up this the parents were supposed to rescue you, right? Or support you. Those may be, are they the same? Are they different? Right? Like there is times when someone is drowning and they need rescuing. And as kids, We are not fully developed human systems and we need rescuing. And the ones that are supposed to be there when they're not, that is so painful. And we don't want to feel that pain. So then we just rescue others. And then we perpetuate the cycle and we don't even know that we're doing it. And it's not bad. It's just an unconscious thing that all humans do. Right. And Nicole's showing some compassion for the parents because they were lost and found floundering. Like if they're drowning in the river and you're drowning in the river, how are they supposed to save you? They can't, right? So then we suffer expecting them to give us something that they don't have to give. It's a gorgeous insight there, Nicole. Really curious as I go a little bit into the descriptors of rescuing. How does rescuing show up in your life? How do you do it? How do you see others do it? And how do we not make it wrong, but simply ignite new possibilities and perspectives? What does rescuer look like when you're doing it or when you see other people doing it? According to David Emerald here, the thoughts of a rescuer is I must save others from harm. If I do good, I will be worthy. And I feel sorry for them, victim. So those are common thoughts of the rescuer. And the feelings, according to David Emerald, is that there's fears of not being needed, feels persecuted when the victim doesn't accept their help, right? So I'm here, I'm helping, and you don't want my help. Well, then I feel persecuted and I take it personally and F you, you know? But I feel superior to the victim because ultimately the rescuer is a subconscious strategy to try and get out of the bad feelings that come along with a victim. And no feelings are bad feelings. There's unpleasant ones. They are bad if you choose to label them as such. I'm not going to make you wrong about that. But the rescuer it's a strategy. It's an attempt to get a need met, to solve for a challenge, a problem that you haven't yet been able to solve for. Earthing, sometimes the rescuer can turn out to be a re-victimizer on purpose. Yes, because when I'm rescuing someone, I'm really actually, it's quite a violent act because I am, from a behavioral standpoint, living into this underlying belief system that you can't do it. You don't have what it takes. You are indeed powerless. And by me rescuing you, I'm reinforcing that message to you that I don't actually believe you can do it and you need me to do it. So that's definitely a re-traumatizing thing. Thank you for that perspective, Earthing. People can relate. So my profession is as a healthcare provider, and I struggled with burnout for a very long time. Keep these comments coming about the perspectives, the ding, the new insight that you're having. What's clicking for you in this conversation? So, we're igniting awareness right now around rescuer, and we're going to talk about what things you can do to expand your possibilities and not rescue as much. And the number one strategy is awareness. Nicole finds this very relevant with children. Yes. And it's tricky with children because they are dependent. So she does her best to assess the issues and ask the victim if they want or need my help. I feel that gives the power back to the victim. Do you need my help? Yes, because you are now giving them a choice, not operating under the assumption that they're helpless, powerless, and they need you, right? So much of the victim energy is because they feel helpless, powerless, often hopeless because there's no choice available to them. So when you give someone choice, that is a really good way to step out of rescuer, is to get curious, ask a question. Do you need my help? Do you want support? It's gorgeous. Oh, Wileen, one way she shows up as a rescuer is to give unsolicited advice. I've learned to be inquisitive and ask questions instead of suggestions. Because when you ask questions, that lets others find their way. Yes. And you're reinforcing, I believe in you. I believe in your resources. I believe in your capacity. I believe in your human system's ability to heal and solve problems and get out of pain. What a gorgeous gift when you ask questions as opposed to giving unsolicited advice. My friends, did you know sometimes giving unsolicited advice, sneaky, sneaky clinical pearl here, giving unsolicited advice could be a sneaky way that your rescuer is showing up. Never saw that before. Thanks for that, Wileen. Oh God, Toby. My parents never could let me grow up because they needed my role to be a victim to fulfill their rescuer role. Bingo. The social influences that were around us while our nervous system was developing can prime the neurological pump and create really deep grooves in our nervous system that compels us to continue to show up in these roles. This is not something that you're necessarily choosing. It is a chemical, comfortable program operating in your human system. And thank God, with awareness, we can change that. It's so true. So, um, my first moment of awakening when I had Awana says she just received a lot of unsolicited advice in the last couple days and can totally see how not all help is helpful. That was hands down one of the best statements I got in physical therapy school by the program director at the time, a woman named Carolyn, whose last name I cannot remember. Starts with an M, I think. But she said, not all help is helpful. If you're working in a hospital, don't help people out of bed. They need to learn how to do it for themselves. And I am absolutely just delighted by this conversation as we create awareness together. KP was a volunteer rescuer to others because I had a rescuer at home for 38 years. My spouse said bye-bye. I became a child. I went from my parents' home to my husband, and now I am rescuing myself. KP, way to go. Way to go. We can rescue ourselves. And you know what? We can do it in so many ways. It's so exciting. This is hardwired in our human system to create new perspectives and possibilities. Crystal is a coach and rescue people every day. So, how can I think to not feel that I re victimize myself and just be clear that I am only the one to give advice? What are people thinking about that? How would you respond to Crystal here? So, Crystal is a coach and says, I hope sorry, Crystal, I think you're a she. And I rescue people every day. So then are you a coach, right? Is your identity and behavior matching up? That's what I would get curious about in the spirit of asking questions. Hello, she, Crystal. I just really appreciate your vulnerability on here. as we're learning together, right? Like, how do we be clear about our role? That it's to give advice, not to rescue. How do we communicate that verbally and non-verbally? Let's have a free consult, Crystal, because I would love to dive more into that with you. And I'm also curious what other people's thoughts are about that. But I think, how do we communicate congruence? I think we need to be congruent in mind and body. And that's why I think it's important. How does rescuer live in your body? And is it okay or not okay? How does coach, which is the role that opposes rescuer, live in your body? And is that okay or not okay? And do you know how a coach shows up versus a rescuer? And are you doing it? Chances are it's probably a mix of both, which is why I want to share this little ditty in a second here. Toby says it's all about the feelings, not the stories. The mind says I'd go directly to feelings and ignore the mind. I would say if that's working for you, awesome. And I always invite uh, the opportunity to challenge my always thinking, my never thinking, my always do this. Like, that's black and white. And there's a time and place in the world for black and white. And there's a third way called gray, which we need black and white. And I think to be available to gray as a thing. And it's so context specific in any given moment. The the more halfway to 90 and 100 I become, the more I do my best to stay curious and questioning and open around cognitive distortions like black and white thinking. And I don't want to make anybody wrong here. You just got to find what works for you. How do you know what works for you? Most often by hurting enough from the stuff that's not working for you to motivate change, which is what I wanted to talk about for a moment here. I'm a healthcare provider as my profession. When I was a child, my mother had a brain aneurysm and left the house in an ambulance and never came back. So very tragic, very traumatic, very unexpected. And I felt like a victim because I didn't have a say in that. I didn't want my mom to die when I was 11 years old. And I didn't want to live at home with my very scary father and be raised by him alone as a teenager. And so I felt like a victim and because I was, and then the victim mentality grew out of that. And I felt very uncomfortable and powerless and helpless as a result of that event that occurred. We all have those events, right? I had a need and it didn't get met. We all have unmet need. And so when our needs aren't getting met, we can oftentimes feel helpless and powerless. And feeling that way for a long time isn't congruent with how we want to be living. So we shift into a rescuer. And it wasn't until 20 something years later when I was sitting in a therapy session and I realized for me, rescuing was all about control. I was trying to control the outcomes of my patients. Maybe if they listen to their body, it will correct how bad I feel inside of me as a result of my mom not listening to her body, which was my narrative at the time. She had a brain aneurysm and she died. It's an unfortunate thing that happens to all of us. And I've done a lot of work to get there. But that's the whole point of all of this, is being aware of the programs inside us as they show up with as much curiosity and compassion as humanly possible. And if you can't find it for yourself, find it for another. So I want to share all this with you because this is what I did to help me get out of rescuer mode. You see, I created this little document. What is rescuing versus what is helping? Okay. It's worth for you recognizing we all have a need and it's not getting met. So we're showing up in a way. It's not bad. Just get curious. Maybe, yeah, that's my story. So I didn't know that my burnout as a healthcare provider was showing up until I started checking my behavior. So a rescuer, assistance is given even when it's not asked for. The rescuer is on autopilot service mode and makes assumptions about other people's needs. That's exactly what Wileen was saying earlier. And Nicole, I'm assuming that you need my help. So here it is. Here's my unsolicited advice instead of asking questions. And the helper, to oppose that rescuer, offers support only when it is needed and asked for. And so back to Crystal as a coach, this might be helpful for you because I literally printed this out and I carried it with me in my purse, and I just got really curious and played this investigative scientist in how I'm showing up in the world and looking and feeling, right? Turns out burnout was my alarm bell that my give receive cycle is cattywampus. I'm giving more than I'm receiving. And when I do that, I go broke, just like a bank account, right? If a bank account has more withdrawals than deposits, it goes broke. If you have more giving energy going out than you have receiving coming in, you will physiologically go broke. And that comes from being a rescuer. Nicole says, I feel we all have to save ourselves. We can only truly guide others to support and save themselves. I'm giving us some space and time here to see what is coming up. Oh, Nicole has had some things to say about saving ourselves. And I suspect this was kind of like my own life vest, my own, what's that rescuer ring? Like I threw this to myself and I carried it around in the drowning waters of trying to rescue people. And this lifted me up. It's like, let me watch and check and see my own behaviors. And KP, I'm so glad you have this on your fridge. And she loves it because it helps her stay on track. Yes. We cannot change it if we are not aware of it. And that is the number one thing, is to be aware how, where, when. What's going on around you when you are showing up as rescuer? And can you get curious? What's the underlying need? Can you meet it? Can you not make it wrong that you're showing up as a rescuer and have compassion for yourself? I think one of the big things Nicole said, life alert, help, I've fallen, right? Because there's, in my experience, shifting out of rescuer, both wanting someone to rescue me and rescuing others, has meant that I need to get better at recognizing I have needs. It's okay to have them. And to learn how to make requests to support myself in getting those needs met. Another way I know that rescuer is showing up in my life is through how it shows up in my body. How do you know when you're showing up as rescuer, right? That's my question to you. Nicole says her rescuer gets frustrated because the person I am rescuing makes me feel resentment. Ding, ding, ding. Yes. i- because you're outputting a lot of energy and you're not receiving fair exchange. And absolutely, that'll create a cattywampus situation in your give receive infinity loop, right? Like there's more out than in, and that resentment is a wonderful indicator of an imbalance that needs correction. And KP says helping makes me feel at peace, and I would agree. KP, I think one of the big takeaways for me was recognizing that rescuer shows up in my body like this. Like I'm very tense. There's a lot of high energy, anxious, nervous, tense energy. My eyes tend to get real big. I don't speak very well. I'm like nervous and scared, and then I try to people please and perform. Wileen actually helped me see that. So other people can help you see you. You can see yourself. And then when you have a little more space between clarify, or when you have a little more space between stimulus and response, then you can clarify, okay, how do I want to show up right now? I can lower the energy in my body, right? Because helping has a more peaceful energy. Rescuing has a more panicked energy. And we can change our bodies to run different programs. I find this very exciting. Do we need practice and reps and training and skill? Yes. Is this something you should do alone? No. Do we all have the ability to do it? Yes. Do we need support? Yes, which is why I'm creating a 6-week course, probably starting in September. Stay tuned for that. When KP is showing up as rescuer, she is a frozen statue. Yes, I'm sure many people can relate to that. Owana says her rescuer feels driven and on autopilot. Yes, very much. Lack of curiosity, just reacting. Vidhaya says that when learning comes from their own experience, it's better internalized and accepted. Yes. It's also sort of invalidating to the one who receives the advice. Yes. That's the best way to learn, is to create and discover for ourselves through our own mistakes. And I don't know if a mistake is a mistake, because if you learn, that's a win. But no, Wileen, it wasn't unsolicited advice. It was my reflection upon something that you said. I think that's the key in alchemizing from rescuer to coach, is to be curious and give yourself time to reflect and think about this. Toby, that's so good. I actually don't know, or I'm unaware when I show up as a rescuer, but I have little to no social contact by choice, so I don't know the signs to look out for. Well, email me, Toby, info@greentreemind.com, because this is a list of objective behaviors where you can start to look and see, where is my gas tank leaking? And it may or may not be relevant for you if you're not interacting with people, but these dynamics are everywhere, and so it's probably just that you're not aware of it. And I'm not saying that as a knock. I think they're just part of the human experience. Nicole, it is all about perspective, and mine has helped me see a different one of myself. I'm so glad. When we share and tell the truth with curiosity and compassion, it gives other people permission to do the same, which is why I really like the dialogue here back and forth. For Vidhaya, yeah, rescuer is layered with panic and an urgency to escape, and I totally get it. And I'm trying to escape something that's trapped within me that needs some support in letting it out. And sharing is a way to let it out. Rescuing just keeps it there, and then we run and spin in loops around it and hope we're distracting ourselves enough from seeing that which is underneath. Mm, yeah. Alana can relate to the panicked feeling. Toby, I look forward to connecting with you. So, next week, we're going to talk about the coach as a way to get out of rescuing. Um, but I want to move towards closing up, and I'm inviting and asking. Do, 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 do. I don't know why I'm pinching my cheeks. Right? But the body will give us clues about things. And it's like, smile more, right? Have more fun because these roles can be really heavy. And I really think that, to talk about like these roles, they probably feel bad, but they're not a something that you chose. They're not bad. Like you're not a bad person for participating in these roles, right? That is so important to remember. Like all the world is a stage. Shakespeare said it. This conversation series is about expanding your possibilities to become aware of and choose different roles that you play in the stage of your life. That's exciting to me. We can create new, right? For me, when I recognized and learned that I was trying to rescue all of my patients, but really I needed the rescuing myself. Then I could start showing up a little bit more as a challenger, as a creator, as a coach to build out new strategies. And it feels a lot better, but I wouldn't say it's like it goes from bad to good. Learning is uncomfortable. So if you're uncomfortable, that means you're doing it right. And oftentimes, to internalize the learning, we got to mess up a lot and feel how bad it feels to be in the role of rescuer, but not make the whole thing wrong, right? We needed rescuing when we were kids and we didn't get it. So let's support ourselves to give it to us now. What are your takeaways from our time together today? What is it that you received? And what is it that you want to take with you so that you can show up in your life either more how you want or less how you don't? And notice that that's a coach asking you, what do you want to take away from today? What are the things that you received today that were valuable for you? Vinhaya feels like advice should be a two-way thing through constantly seeking feedback from the one receiving advice. That right there is such a creator expression. Sometimes unsolicited advice comes. You may or may not want it. You may or may not need it. You may or may not be open to it. If unsolicited advice comes, how can you create a new possibility for yourself, a new role for yourself in that scene of your life moment? KP is going to continue to be compassionate to herself. I am not a loser. You are not a loser, not in a critical, judgmental kind of way at all. These are normal roles. We need them to play in the theater of our lives. After a while, certain roles might need some diversity or balance, right? Like one of the rules of improv is make your scene partner look good. Like, wow, rescuer, you're really good at this. And what if we tried this approach? What? And then the coach can balance the rescuer. There's so many good things from improv. So, Nicole, oh, Thank you. She says, public service announcement. This is an amazing way to start one's week. Fresh perspective, encouragement, love, self love, curiosity. Love you, friend. I feel the same. Thank you. Solo mija, there are different types of rescue. Absolutely. And the more we can recognize what type of rescuing is needed in what moment towards whom, ourself or another, there is where the freedom lies. Crystal, so much curiosity about this topic, so many ahas. I really thank you for that. Like when we expand our awareness, it just creates possibility and perspective for new roles to show up. Owana, recognizing and exploring the unmet needs that the rescuer comes from. Absolutely. So good in herself and others. Crystal, forgiving myself to not know everything. Oh God, my inner persecutor loves berating me for that one. Life is part mystery. When you look at the ingredients of life, no matter how you try to cook it up, mystery will always be an ingredient. The unknown, the unexpected, the unwanted. What do we do with that? That is such a good question. And depending on what role is dominant in your world, really creates how your life experience goes, right? The unknown, the unexpected, the unwanted, the mystery. When I'm showing up as victim, rescuer, or persecutor, God, I hate my life. And it's so painful to say that, but it's true because my perspective creates so much of my physiology and how I experience the world. And that's why, even though these roles can be comfortable chemically for us and familiar as victim, rescuer, persecutor, when we can expand and balance from 3 roles in our life to 6 without making any of them wrong, wow, opens up a life that's really beautiful and creates a whole nother set of lovely challenge and opportunity for growth. So let's see. Um, let's be losers of the negative, losers of the pain. Nicole says, yes, I had this like profound duh ha this morning of like, hey, did you know pain can end? For some people, that's mind blowing. Toby wants to dive deep into the roles to learn more about human behavior. That's awesome. Be sure to email me, my friend. Brent says, as someone who almost died twice from childhood asthma, I needed my rescuer to activate defenses against behaviors that could kill me. That's real. Crystal, thank you. I'm grateful for this time with you as well. For this week, Vidhya intends to check in when I notice that I'm entering into the rescuer role. What a beautiful, beautiful thing. I look forward to hearing about what you learned from that, Vidhya. Thank you so much to you. And Vidhya says, thank you to everyone here. Your presence is valued and appreciated, and it does make this whole time together feel more light, delight, and joyful. Owana, thank you for being here. We will meet again next week and explore the opposing role to rescuer, which is coach. So enjoy, my friends, and we will see you next week.